This year has been monumental for Denmark because for the first time in over half a century, the kingdom has a new monarch. After decades of dedicated service, Queen Margrethe II stepped down from the throne in January, and her son, now King Frederik X, has taken on the role. And we're here to talk about his first year as king and the legacy that Margrethe leaves behind and what we can expect for the future of the Danish royals. You're listening to What Are You Doing in Denmark, the podcast that helps you make Denmark make sense. I'm your host, Eric Hartman, and I'm joined around the table by your friend and mine, Brooke Black.
Daus. Hello.
The hilarious Conrad Molden.
Hello.
And to help us break down the year that was in the Danish royal family, we are joined by Anna Maria, the host of the On Royals podcast and an expert in all things royal. Hello, Anna.
Hello. Nice to see you.
Yes.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes, you too.
To begin, I know it's been an exciting year, but maybe we should go back to the 31st of December of last year when that was the fateful abdication of Queen Margrethe. So did you foresee her stepping down? Were you surprised like us?
I think everyone was surprised, myself included. I remember I was on a S-train in Copenhagen. It was rainy. It was very cold, like the worst Danish December weather.
Exactly.
And I was on the train because we were about to go to a restaurant, meet with some friends. And then a friend texted my husband like, Queen Margrethe is abdicating. And I was like, what? And I didn't know about it. And it was a big surprise. And I think everyone was surprised.
Yeah.
It was the number one topic during New Year's Eve last year. We haven't seen it coming, really.
And if you're listening or watching and you don't know, so the monarch, I guess, I don't know what the best title would be, always delivers a speech on New Year's Eve on the 31st. So if you're not aware of that part of important part of Danish culture, then there you go. So this year, though, during the speech, she said,
I'm just going to resign. Bye.
But how well is Margrethe known outside of Denmark? Or was this friends in Denmark, you mean? Like all of your friends here?
Friends here in
so
Denmark.
Like maybe your friends in Poland wouldn't know as much, right?
No, they wouldn't. I mean, like people who are into royal topics, of course, and it was all over the news because how many news can you have on New Year's Eve apart from fireworks? Right. So it was number one. I'm sure people in news agencies, they were not very happy to have another news going. But I think outside of Denmark, Queen Margrethe is known as one of the longest serving monarchs in Europe, first of all. The only female monarch in the world, in Europe especially, after Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah.
And I think after Queen Elizabeth II died, she got some international spotlight.
I was going to say, she started getting a lot more attention. Her and Lizzie, before Lizzie died. And then New York Times, places like that were like the longest reigning woman monarch. Yeah,
she was the second interesting female monarch, right? Yeah. So of course the attention kind of shifted to her, and Queen Elizabeth were quite close. They were cousins, of course, but they were also...
I didn't know they were cousins.
Yes, of course. I mean, they're all related.
Not a deep dating pool.
But also they were kind of in the same situation. They were on the throne when they were quite young. They lost their dads quite young. And they shared a lot of similarities during their reign. Both of their reigns were super long as well. Queen Elizabeth, 70 years. Margaret, 52. There's not a lot of queens. Yeah. So it was a very small
there's not
club.
Any queens.
I mean, there was Queen in the Netherlands as well during their time. But yeah, like up until now, the last few years, they were the only ones. Mm-hmm. There is a famous interview as well with Queen Margrethe when she calls Elizabeth Lizzie as well. And, apparently Queen Elizabeth called her Daisy, her nickname.
Daisy, that's right. Daisy.
Yeah, they were always very fond of each other.
So sweet.
We know that Queen Elizabeth stretched it out until the end. Do you think maybe that played any role in her deciding to step down?
We could see quite a shift in Queen Margrethe's reign after the death of Queen Elizabeth II. I don't know if you remember, there were very famous pictures when Queen Elizabeth's coffin was on a public display in the Westminster Palace, and Queen Margrethe basically cried when she saw the coffin. So it was very moving for her. And shortly after Queen Elizabeth II's death, Margrethe stripped her grandsons and grandchildren, and granddaughters, grandchildren, from her second son Joachim, stripped them from their royal titles. So it was a big shift, and definitely the death of Queen Elizabeth II had to kind of sparkle something in her mind, like maybe I'm gonna die one day too. I want to kind of clean up before Frederik's come to the throne. So that was the big shift. And after that, unfortunately, we could see her having some health problems, going through surgeries and so on. So 2023 was a difficult year for her in terms of her health. Yeah, and then apparently she decided to step down.
Do you feel like those changes were also a way of trying to preserve the monarchy for the future, whereas the reach wasn't as big because there's been a lot of anti-royal in the UK, a lot of anti-sentiment around the royals there. So maybe that might have had an influence as well, or do you not think that was related at all?
I don't think the anti-royal sentiments in UK are really related to the monarchy in Denmark.
Yeah.
Because a social support towards the monarchy in Denmark is much, much higher than in the UK. It is around 80%, and there is around maybe 16% of Danes who want a republic instead of monarchy actively. At least it was beginning of 2024. So the support for the monarchy in Denmark is quite high. It wasn't like this from the beginning of Queen Margrethe's reign when she started to be queen in 1972. The popularity rate, let's say, was around 40%, and 40% also wanted a republic because they thought that monarchy is not a fit for a modern democracy, as Denmark was at the time and wanted to be. But through her reign, she showed that you can be yourself and you can be queen. She really gained the trust and support from Danes. Of course, not every Dane will love Queen Margrethe because we know we are different and so on. And I myself know Danes who are anti-monarchist, but I think that the social landscape and the popularity rate between Denmark and UK is completely different.
Did you say it was 1942 that she became queen?
1972.
1972.
Yeah,
Close
52
enough.
years.
Sorry,
ago.
Sorry, my math. I was just thinking, someone had told me that they tried to give Finland a royal, like, king or queen, and they were like, no thanks.
Yeah,
it was like, but that was right around like wartime, I think, at the end. They're like, they're like, no, we don't want that. But I thought maybe the reach in the UK of how much citizens' money is going towards royals is a lot more than it is in Denmark. Maybe it's a little more contained, and maybe that's also why I'm just making stuff up, maybe, apparently. I don't know but these are all things that I've heard other people that are royal enthusiasts like.
Yeah.
We'll have to ask somebody from the UK.
Is there anyone in this room that's from the UK? Sorry. Is that true?
Yeah, what do you
Sir Conrad of
Lord Conrad, thank you. I mean, I know, of course, it's been controversial in the UK, the amount of money that is spent on the royals. The story that I know from Denmark, and I only heard this secondhand, is that the Queen's residence in Aarhus, which is at Marcellesborg, that they turned it into they changed the technicality so it became a public park. So you can't enter the property, but you can be on the land at certain times when the royal family aren't there. And because of that, Aarhus Kommune has to pay to tend the gardens and clip the trees and blah, 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 because it's a public space now.
Right.
And that apparently, at least the person I was talking to, who is Danish, told me that was a shift that the royals had been making in Denmark to become more accessible. As you were talking about before we started recording, like Buckingham Palace, for example, I mean, you can pay a lot of money to do very, very limited tours of very small parts of it. But generally, the properties that the royal family use currently are not accessible to the public. I know that they have been. Greenwich Park, for example, was the Queen's private garden and residence, and that has been opened up a long time ago. But generally, I feel like there is a big disconnect. I mean, when I was living in Aarhus, the royal family come on their ship, and there's no security.
Yep.
None. There's a guy standing there checking his TikTok. And then
it's wild. It's great.
They go driving in the middle of the town. People stand outside Matas and like cheer and stuff. In the UK, that would never happen.
I mean, the royal run, right? They're like running with people. With the masks. So
I mean, you imagine Prince Andrew running. And watching a rain of rocks landing on it.
From the police, maybe?
I cannot imagine him running.
Yeah. I know. I mean, you even see sometimes, photos of Queen Mary dropping the kids off at school in a cargo bike, and it's like, oh yeah. So I think it is a bit more accessible in many ways, not just physically that you can access them. They genuinely are trying to live a very modest life despite the enormous wealth and prestige that they have.
It is all called something like Monarchy on bikes, which is not happening in the UK.
As you said that, I'd heard something like that. I was something about Montclair, like how can you be like for the people in your Montclair jackets, kind of, because like you will always be a person of note because you are a royal family. So like it's hard to balance that. It's great, and I know that that's why they have such a high. Like people love them so much in Denmark, because they're just like us, as stars. They're just like us, taking their bikes taking their kids to school. But it is interesting to think about.
I think they're pretty like vocal with their charitable efforts as well, right? I mean, I feel like a lot of the foundations that the different members of the Danish royal family have, like I feel like I know about them a lot more than I see in other countries. Of course,
also love that
I'm closer here, but
King Frederik cries. I mean, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. It's emotional.
Yeah, but it's like a pretty standard thing for royals to do charitable things in all countries.
Sure.
So this is what royals do. It's not unique for Denmark, but what's unique for Denmark is as you said, like the sense of accessibility, that they're normal people. But they cannot get it too far. They cannot be too normal because then you're like, well,
then we don't need you.
Yeah, we don't need you.
Hot Cheetos at the
president. I think that the contrast between, let's say, UK and Denmark is striking, especially when it comes to the security. Here you can just come up to Amalienborg Palace, touch it. I don't know, like feel like almost a meter away there could be someone from a royal family. In Buckingham Palace you cannot do it because you have fence, you have everything. They're much closer to people, and even the balcony, if you happen to be on a royal occasion next to Amalienborg, the balcony is so close. I mean, like you can see them so close, and you don't have to stand in lines for hours and hours. You can just come like 10 minutes before and have a good spot. So that's a big difference.
And during the procession where Margrethe took the last carriage ride, I was out there on the street, and there was no barricades, I think.
No barricades.
And very little security. And everyone was just orderly. Everyone had their flags. I was getting emotional, and it was like just to be able to see the sea of people, and everyone is just happy and orderly, and not like you worry about what's going to happen with a gun or and like when there's more police force, you get more scared. I feel like you're like, oh, what's going to happen? There's a lot of security. Whereas here it was just like, what? It
did seem a little surreal that it was
surreal.
so...
It was one of those like I live in Denmark moments where I'm like, wow, this is so different than what I know.
Where are the snipers? And have we swept the streets for package bombs? I don't know. Yeah, it felt very... Maybe they did.
Waving.
I don't know.
It was her last time. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. I'm like, I don't have an attachment to this queen, but I just like she's so beloved, and that I get why people love her so much.
Yeah.
Do you guys also feel like as internationals here, like as non-Danes living here, like an attachment to her, or is that just Brooke?
Besides me.
I do too. I'll say I do too. I think part of it is
I think it's cool to be in a place with a royal family.
Like royal history. I kind of do like having that. But do you guys feel differently?
I mean, like she's such a pop culture icon in Denmark, and as an international, you don't know a lot of pop culture icons in Denmark because if you don't speak the language very well, you're not part of the culture. But because you can find so many English documentaries about her and so on, like she's very accessible also for internationals, and she's also on the package of biscuits in the Flying Tiger, for example.
I didn't know that.
It's a tin, like Danish proper tin.
Yeah.
And she's there. I mean, like her portrait, let's say.
It's the Danish butter cookies, right?
Yeah.
Like the things that I don't think are actually popular in Denmark, but outside of Denmark.
Everybody thinks
so
of them.
tasty. And you can put your, sewing equipment later in, and some buttons and so on. Also, when you kind of try to know her a bit more, apart from the fact that she's a royal, you happen to know that she did illustrations for Lord of the Rings. She did multiple scenographies and costume designs. She recently starred in Netflix show about the process of set design or set decoration by her to one of the Danish movies, and she's just a cool queen. And then she has a picture with a hot dog and a cigarette.
She'll never give up that cigarette.
Riding the roller coaster at Tivoli on her birthday.
Doing Rutschiben. Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah, she's I would say she's like a mascot kind of.
And she's got great style. She dresses. She has really
She's
cool
in Vogue,
dresses. Yeah.
As a royal expert, can you confirm or deny that her favorite brand of cigarettes are these illegally imported Greek? I know she doesn't smoke now, right? She quit.
Not in public.
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't smoke in public in few years.
Okay.
Already.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
isn't it behind the scenes that she has actually quit, or is that's not true?
I don't know. I haven't asked her. But
Find her in the smoking break.
if you say that,
Let's bring her out. Margrethe, have a seat.
if you say that she had or has a favorite brand of Greek cigarettes, then she might get it from her sister, who was married to the last king of Greece. For a long time, they weren't allowed to go to Greece, but then they started to go to Greece, and it might be the connection.
Does Greece still have a royal family, or when you say the last king, like
They
the last in?
It sounds very...
And don't have at the same time. Greece, they abolished the monarchies in early 60s. The last king of Greece was was actually brother-in-law for Queen Margrethe. But now they have a royal family, but it's like a former royal family. So it's difficult, the relationship between the government and royal family. Maybe now it's a bit better, but 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s was very difficult. They weren't even allowed to be in the country. They had to live in exile in London. But
I think I heard about this.
Yeah, it is a very interesting story.
And they weren't funded by the state, like the Greek royal family?
Not after they were.
Wow, so they had to go from... So literally there was a day when they were like, all right,
Yes.
your
They were
lease
like
is
living
up.
in a hotel in London or something. And then,
They had a residency.
okay.
And, like
They
they
were
were
also
very
related
close.
to Prince Philip, is that right?
It is, but it's not at the same time. Like, it's the same family.
Okay.
But Prince Philip doesn't come from the family, like the branch of the family that was exiled in the end.
I need actual
yeah.
trees, like
Yeah.
family trees to be able
Go
to put
to
up everywhere.
Amalienborg.
Yeah.
Like if you're in Amalienborg, the museum is not super big, but on one wall there is a huge family tree,
Okay.
and you can stare at this family tree for hours. I mean, like there's so many connections.
Wow.
It's really unbelievable. Prince Philip is from Danish and Greek royal
Why are
family.
the cigarettes
as well.
illegal?
Oh, because of something to do with the nicotine levels that don't meet regulations
They're
in Denmark.
Oh.
Menthol's no
I think it's
longer-
more like harsher than Marlboro Red.
Oh.
Like I think she likes
my
She
dad
needs
was
the
a
hard
Marlboro
stuff.
man.
the hard stuff for a
That-
long day of queening.
Marlboro
Oh
man.
yeah.
Hard day of queening. goes good with a hot dog and a Cosio. Right after the roller coaster.
Yeah,
Oh my god, a hot dog and a Kokio.
and a cigarette.
So now that she's gone, we've talked a little bit about her legacy, her reign. What do you think lies ahead for King Frederik? He did ascend to the throne in January, and I believe it was exactly on the same date that Margrethe ascended, which is pretty cool.
Oh,
It was done
done
on purpose. It wasn't. It wasn't an accident.
Oh yeah.
So she resigned. She announced her abdication 31st of December, but she said that it's gonna be on 15th of January, and it was because it was also the date for a shift that her father and she did. Like her father died on this day, and she became queen in 72 this day. So she was a queen for 52 years. To the day.
I also love how there was no fanfare. Like DR had the video of her coming in and just signing and being like, "Bye,
Right,
peace."
and then she just walked out of the room.
She's gets an
Okay,
e-box,
it's done.
It was a bit sad. I thought they were gonna do
Yeah,
like
I
a
did
big
too. I was like-
pomp.
logs in with mid-ED.
She's like, "You take it from here."
Yeah,
Go Kent, you are now king.
I'm on garden leave. Like she gave 2 weeks notice.
That was such an interesting thing. I was watching with my kids, and I was like, "Was that it?
Where did she go?
Just sitting there applying for Fairy Peng.
Yeah, but she did resign on the last day of the month, like most people do. Here.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that
that's
was
true.
Quite considerate
but
of
she,
her.
like as long as she was in the job, I think she should have like longer resignation time.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
A longer
Yeah.
goodbye.
Yeah, it wasn't a long
Like
transition.
I think it's not up to Danish standards
No.
of job market.
That's true. It should be 3 months in advance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Plus a couple of weeks buffer.
Or maybe for like 52 years of service, even like 6 months in advance.
I like that.
We'll have to check in the job.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
At least she
market
trained her replacement.
things.
That's good.
But I'm very curious to know what you think about Frederik stepping in these shoes, because we've got the Christmas Eve speech coming, all these things. So.
Oh yeah, like I cannot wait. I mean, like it's gonna be very difficult, but very similar at the same time. I think for the last few years, she had some health issues, as we mentioned before, and Frederik is not 25 years old, so he had his time to be kind of king in waiting, as Mary had a time to be queen in waiting. They don't have small kids and everything, so for a few years prior to this, of course, there were crown prince and princess of Denmark, but they were kind of, doing all the things that monarch and the spouse of my monarch do. There is I don't see a big shift between what they did before and what they do now in terms of their state visits and so on, apart from the fact that their rank has changed. And of course, he's a monarch. He has to sign the parliament acts and everything. He is opening the parliament, but he was also at the openings of the parliament prior to his reign. So he was accompanying Queen Margrethe, for example, for the last few years. So you can, I think this transition is pretty smooth, as is in the UK. It was the same thing. I think what Frederik has and adopted after his mother is the authenticity. And his mother, we know, is an artist. We like her because we kind of know her. She's not hiding behind the title. She's we can see her own person, and we can see the same with Frederik. We know he's super sporty. He does everything possible with the sports, run, and he did some ski tours as well, and biking. He's a big sports supporter. He's a military man as well. He's a family man. We kind of have the feeling that we also kind of know him, and he's authentic, at least. There was one gossip, of course, we all know about it.
Oh yeah, tell us more.
There was one gossip.
Which was...
You know about this, right?
Oh, yes.
Which kind of, I would say, was the biggest crisis.
Timing was terrible.
Terrible. A scandal. And
sorry, that was in Spanish.
I know. Sorry, I was habla español. Because
and I would say it was the only kind of image crisis for the last few years that Danish monarchy had as well, but also him as...
Can we explain it for
yes,
listeners that may not know?
Of course, because...
Not to put you on the spot, I don't want you to be worried about
being accused
them coming after you.
No. So there was a gossip. It was around November last year, so a month before Queen Margrethe resigned, that allegedly... Then Prince Frederik had a little romance with a Mexican socialite with ties to Spanish aristocracy. It all happened in Madrid, and it was of course in Spanish newspapers, and it was kind of fueled up in Denmark as well. No one ever confirmed this, and of course everyone just want to forget about this. We don't know if it's true or not. But it was a huge topic. So then...
Wait, was it because he was leaving at 5 a.m. from the place?
Yeah, he spent half of a day or full day with her. Then he went to her apartment. Then they went out, something. And then he was leaving her place in the very morning with a suitcase. So maybe he just, popped the suitcase there as a luggage locker. Whatever. But yeah,
he doesn't have enough money to store it elsewhere.
No, I don't think those 3 euros.
It's just like us,
50 crowns at the train station. So can I use your place? What do you think? Do you think that he is?
He never issued a statement or anything.
It wasn't confirmed. It was kind of leave me alone more. I always want to believe that everything that it's not confirmed is not existent. Kind of, especially. You have a lot of those royal scandals and press. They always want to pick something on celebrities and just make a headline out of this. And we've seen it so many times, especially with the British royals. But we never know what's undercover, and we never know what's actually happening in those families.
One thing that's always confused me a little bit with royal families in general is this idea that they have these incredibly, widespread PR teams who spend a lot of time trying to insulate and protect the royal family from scandals and kill stories and these kind of things under this idea that if there is a controversy that's so bad that might undermine the monarchy. But then I look at the UK and I think the amount of scandals and the terrible things that happen and are continuing to happen, and they survive. So I just wondering, do you believe that there can become a point where a scandal becomes so bad that it could demolish a monarchy?
It's always an option. But for so many years, both in the UK and here in Denmark, they stay strong. And after even a scandal like with Prince Andrew, for example, the monarchy still kind of rebuilds the trust. There's always have to be at least one person in the family that it's not scandalous. It was Queen Elizabeth II in the UK, and she was the face and the heart of the monarchy. And as long as we couldn't hear so bad stories about her, the monarchy survived. It's also about the trust in the monarchy and in the system from the public. If they will still trust, even this 51%, the monarchy will survive.
Like you spoke about with Greece, right? There must have been a reason in the 60s that there was not enough
support. But it wasn't a royal scandal. It was kind of a political riot.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. It's usually like this, especially in 20th century. There were a lot of political changes in Europe, and a lot of countries that decided that monarchy is a bit outdated, and they don't want to have it. They want to have a democracy. They don't have the money as well to support royal families. It wasn't that much because of a scandal, because there's always another person who can take over that is with a good reputation.
I think one thing I sort of reflect on with the Danish royals and the gossip that was mentioned and things like that, to me, obviously they're normal people, they are authentic people. It's something that was in private, and even though I was joking around about it, but the thing that I do admire about them is coming from the U.S., where things do end up, almost everything ends up being sort of politicized. I think it's really nice to have a symbol of the country who is sort of a leader in the country that is apolitical. For example, during COVID, I felt very comforted that Queen Margrethe broke tradition and gave a speech outside of her once-a-year annual speech. And I find that there's a lot of comfort in having an apolitical symbol of the country, even if it doesn't fully unify everyone, because some people still prefer a republic. I like that there's something above the discourse, the national discourse here, that unifies a little bit.
The only time I had seen all of the Danish flags and everybody, like old people, young people, was also when Vingegaard won the Tour de France. So we were accidentally behind the parade that he was in on the street, like driving. And I just was marveling at everybody out on the streets. Like that's like another unifying thing, is there is a lot of that like national pride in a great way. It doesn't have to be in a scary way like it is in the U.S. It's so unfortunate that that's been kind of ruined. Yeah,
it's nice when countries have those sort of monocultural features and moments, whether it's winning the Tour de France or
everyone can kind of be happy and proud of it. So I think that's a really special thing that I hope Danes don't take for granted, because I think it's really
and I understand monarchy may be outdated and there may be people who feel a certain way about it, and again, coming from a country without that, it's hard for me to fully grasp. But that's sort of my take on it.
A tricky question. Would you like to have monarchy in the USA?
It'd be like, it would probably be like Hulk Hogan and like a celebrity.
Kardashian,
it would be like they always, I cannot believe from the outside, like just the political cycle of, I knew it when we lived there, but seeing it from the outside, it's such a circus where it's like, what famous people can we bring? And we've got Beyonce now, and we've got Hulk Hogan over here, and we've got it's just, so I don't even know what a royal family would look like. But you certainly couldn't put it in now. It would have had to have just been there from the beginning of.
You can have the British one back if you want. You can take them.
That's how we started, was getting rid of
that queen back on the money. Or I guess the king now.
I think if we have anything close, it may be like former presidents, I think, sort of take that role, because traditionally, it's always been the tradition that they sort of step away from politics and they only focus on philanthropy. I think this last decade in politics, without name dropping, y'all know the characters involved, that sort of broke from tradition because so many other things broke from tradition, and former presidents and political leaders started to speak out about the political times. But typically you would have Jimmy Carter comes to mind. He gets a lot of flack as not being a very good president, but being a very good person. And he's done so much. I think he's won Nobel Prizes.
He won the Nobel Prize for, Peace Nobel Prize for his philanthropy after the presidency.
Absolutely. And so I think figures like that sort of, I think he found a way after his presidency to sort of transcend the political parties. And I think both sides really admire him. And I think he's, so I think that's probably the closest thing I can think of.
Yeah.
And I think we're even starting to lose that. So it makes me a little sad. Yeah.
So far, Frederik's doing fine.
Yeah, he's
status quo. They did their tour to the kingdom on the boat. That seemed like it all went well. I think it got delayed a little bit, but...
I mean, like they both did a tour of Denmark. They went to Faroe Island, Greenland, which is also part of the Kingdom of Denmark, both of the Greenland and Faroe Islands. They did also a few international trips. Actually, the first international trip of Frederik was to Poland, which was not planned.
Ooh.
Yeah, which was not planned as the first trip of the king, but it was planned prior to his being on the throne. So everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's the first one."
What was he doing there?
He went to Warsaw to meet with political leaders in Poland. Of course, there are a lot of military ties between Poland and Denmark in terms of the ongoing conflicts right now, but also a lot of economical ties. A lot of Denmark companies, huge companies, they have their offices or back offices in Poland. So like half of my friends in Poland, they work in Danish companies.
Wow.
Especially in Warsaw, but also with Szczecin. Szczecin is a city very close to Copenhagen. My husband is from there, so greetings to Szczecin. But also they have a very good cooperation with Denmark, and the president of the city hosted already Frederik and Mary 10 years prior. So they have an ongoing relationship, and the economical ties are very, very, very strong.
So Poland was the first stop.
Poland was the first, and then of course Scandinavia. Sweden, Norway, cousins, friends, best friends, sometimes enemies. Yes,
literal cousins in the royal family, right?
so of course they went to Stockholm and Oslo, and then they visited their own realms. So a lot of traveling, and I think we can see more of this next year as well. And of course, Mary. Everyone I think loves Mary. Like she dresses so well.
Fellow international living in Denmark. Yeah. Trailing spouse. And to close things out, maybe if you had to rate Frederik's first year, how would you rate it? And what do you think we can look forward to in his speech compared to his mother's?
It is, as I said, kind of similar to what he's done before. I would say like 8 out of 10.
Right.
Which gives
8 crowns out of 10.
8 crowns out of 10, yeah.
Which is a good rate.
Yeah, good.
I'm really looking forward to his speech. Actually, I'm very curious if he's gonna say "God save Denmark" at the end, because he is the first king from I think like 200 years or so to not mention God in his motto.
Oh.
So, well, let's see. Yeah.
Sign of the times.
Sign of the times. Yeah. But I think it's gonna be more dynamic than the Queen Margrethe is probably.
Maybe he'll cry.
Oh, excellent.
Get a little emotional.
I don't think so.
How old is he? 40s? 50s?
56, 7, something like this.
Really?
Yeah.
He seems so young, you know?
Well, he did a lot of sports, so maybe that's the way. We have to run, we have to ski, we have to.
But
cycle.
what do we know? Like, what does Joachim and them do? What are they into?
He moved to Washington D.C., I think.
Really?
Yeah.
They're like,
he was in Paris.
You don't want us here.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
he was like an attaché, something to an embassy.
It's kind of that's actually weird.
It's kind of tough.
Watching the.
I feel like there's more there.
We watched in person Margrethe go by the day of, what do we call it? The procession, the abdication?
The proclamation.
Proclamation, yes, thank you. And then we went back to our house to watch the rest of it on TV and see the speech. And you see Joachim's car just like kind of driving away, and it's like mentioned for maybe a second, like, and then they go. Like, it's like, no, or maybe it was not even mentioned. But like, it's really crazy to me how it's... And here's the king, and this other part of the family doesn't exist at all.
Also
like,
present, her other son, the spare.
Yeah, I know that that's a very common thing, and that's what it is, but I just find that so strange. Like, it's just not even noticed. Like, okay, well, and then we They drove away, never to be seen again. They drove to DC, and they had
We're about to miss the Molslinian.
the Molslinian.
Like we got our ferry is in 1 hour 10.
It's not in Kalundborg. It's in Shilensada.
We went the wrong way.
Anna, thank you so much for giving us your thoughts and letting us know what to expect and your review of the first year. And we'll hope that you'll come back and tell us a little more about the royals.
It can happen.
Yes.
It can happen. It was a very pleasant chat with you guys, and I loved your observations. And, it's always nice to talk about royals because there's so much to cover. Hope to see you next time.
Yes. And you can catch more of Anna on the On Royals podcast. We'll put links to her shows and all of her social media in the description. And thanks for watching, everybody. Hi.